What's going on, Peoria? You are now tuned in to another episode of Breaking It Down with Brett Brooks here on Strictly Hip Hop 90.7, where we bring the stories that matter to us, to you, in real time. So let's get into it. First of all, happy 2026. We are now a little bit over a week into 2026, the brand new year. Hopefully, those resolutions are resoluting. But let's get into some of the new laws in Illinois that are going, or are now, I should say, taking effect in 2026. And these are the things that you need to know about. So let's get started. So there were obviously a good chunk of new laws that took effect this year, 2026, and several of them are going to directly impact public safety, schools, healthcare workers, and family. So first, let's talk about gun safety. Under Senate Bill 8, also known as the Safe Gun Storage Act, gun owners must now securely store firearms in locked containers if they are a risk to a child, someone who is vulnerable, or a prohibited person could access them. Lost or stolen firearms must be reported within 48 hours, and any of these violations can have a fine up to $10,000. So that's just one law. All right, the next one goes into police accountability. As we know, Governor J.B. Pritzker signed the Sonya Massey Act last year and is now taking effect this year. So the Sonya Massey Act will now require any law enforcement agency to conduct a minimum 30-day background review before they hire a police officer. So any police department must now request and review any prior employment records, any disciplinary histories from a candidate, any military records, and anything else. This law was passed in response to Sonya Massey passing away when she was killed in Sangamon County. Next, missing persons. Now, the next law is going to affect missing persons. Police departments can no longer impose waiting periods before accepting a missing person report, and cases must remain open until that person is found. A new Golden Search Task Force will help coordinate alerts and responses for missing people with development disabilities. So this was a really big deal because we know that there was a 24-hour waiting period for anybody who was over a certain age. Now that is being eliminated. The next law is going to go into the schools. So in schools, the Safe Schools for All Act is guaranteeing every child in Illinois the right to a free K through 12 public education regardless of their immigration status. Schools are prohibited from asking about immigration status or sharing that information. And immigration agents are limited from entering school buildings without proper legal authority. Okay, so let's get into healthcare. There's a few minor changes happening in the hospital system. First, hospitals must now give patients the opportunity to designate an emergency contact, and they are required to notify that person if a patient's condition changes significantly or if they pass away. Next, for working parents, especially nursing mothers, Illinois employers must now provide 30 minutes of paid breakup time to pump breast milk up to 1 year after birth without cutting their pay or forcing employees to use their personal leave. All right, now here's just two more that I found that were really interesting actually. So, first one is that families may now scatter any cremated remains in Illinois rivers when required by religious faith. So, you can sprinkle Auntie Susan, across the Illinois River if it matches your religious faith. And then the last one is that hotels across the state of Illinois must phase out single-use plastic toiletries unless guests specifically request them. So this is the soap, the mini conditioners, the shampoos, anything that is those small little knickknacks in hotels will slowly begin to start phasing out, and you'll have to request those at the front desk, and that is for environmental concerns. And before I let you guys out of here, let's just keep talking politics as the spring Illinois general legislative session is about to kick off. And as we know, 2026 is an election year. 2026 is an election year in Illinois, especially when it comes to our governor. So the next story, let's talk about some of the Illinois political races that are heating up. Even though Election Day may be a little ways away, the Illinois 2026 political season is currently underway, and we have some polls to kind of see what the temperature is among people in Illinois. So as we know, Governor J.B. Pritzker is back on the ballot, and he is one of the strongest incumbents. And Republicans, including Darren Bailey, are pushing platforms focused on government spending cuts and restructuring state agencies. But one of the more competitive races right now is that U.S. Senate seat, which has been vacated by Senator Dick Durbin, who had it for at least a minute. So there's a new poll from Emerson College and WGN-TV based out of Chicago, surveying some of the Democratic primary voters. 31% support Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy to take that position. Another 10% supports the current Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton. 8% is supporting Congresswoman Robin Kelly for that position. And 46% of voters are still kind of undecided. Now, the undecided number matters because polling shows Krishnamurthy's support is growing among voters over 50 and male voters, while nearly half of women voters are still undecided, which means no one knows anything. No one knows anything about this race at all, but just wanted to give you guys some of the numbers from one of the first polls coming out for this coveted position. Now, at the same time, Illinois lawmakers are heading back to Springfield, so let's kind of get into the weeds of that. The Illinois senators are going back on January 13th, and those in the House, the representatives, are returning on January 20th. Now, the spring Illinois General Assembly taking place in Springfield is running through May 31st. And some of the key election dates to know is that the primary elections are on March 17th, 2026, and the general election is on November 3rd, 2026. Just so you guys know what's updated and what's going on when it comes to Illinois politics. So these are some of the laws that are new in Illinois and some of the political movements that are happening in the state this year. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Breaking It Down with Brett Brooks here on Strictly Hip Hop 90.7. Don't forget to stay Black, stay empowered, stay educated, register to vote, because the process of registering to vote in Illinois has a few more hurdles than before. All this other stuff. So let's make sure you guys have your ducks in a row when it comes to voting this year and making sure that you are registered to vote early so you don't get caught up in everything that happens closer to the elections. So don't forget to stay empowered and stay warm. I will catch you guys next week.